folks. Welcome to the first episode of the VVU. Today, we have Jeremy Merrill, Philip Armstrong, Joe Maurer, and myself, Curtis Edwards. We're going to talk to you guys about all the updates that took place throughout the month of February. Of course, the month of February is the month of love because Valentine's Day was in the month. We all showed love to our loved ones, and we're going to show some love to VxRail as well. We're going to talk about the updates that took place to VxRail with new software releases. We're going to also talk about updates that took place to VCF, VMware Cloud Foundation on VxRail, and what those releases meant to you, the general public. To kick things off, we're just going to keep it casual. We're going to let either Philip, Joe, or Jeremy, any one of you guys want to start out with any of those updates? I mean, there's multiple in each one of those categories. So let's just pick one and kind of dive into it a little bit and talk about it.
Yeah, I think we can go chronologically. Let's start out back to the beginning of February, where we released the first update. As you mentioned, Curtis, we had quite a few different updates for VCF and VxRail throughout the month of February. But the first one we had was that 703.20 release, which was really nice for us to get out. That picked up vSphere 7.0 Update 3C. So we have our VxRail 7.0 Update 3 release out that customers can start upgrading to, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with. That patches our log4j inside the system. So we're patched log4j on that 7.0 code release beginning to end from the VMware components as well as the VxRail components itself. And that also becomes the basis for some of the hardware updates that will start shipping here in the near future with regards to the dynamic nodes on 15G based hardware, as well as the expansion of the VxRail ecosystem into the satellite nodes, which are actually those single node VxRail systems that have been talked about a little bit.
So you mentioned dynamic nodes right there, right? And the four of us, have you guys, other than myself, have you guys seen any traction on dynamic nodes? I'm seeing a lot of good traction. You want to talk a little bit about why dynamic nodes and what customers find valuable in regards to dynamic nodes?
Yeah, I'll chime in here, Curtis. I definitely am seeing significant interest and uptake of dynamic nodes. We've had the 14G dynamic nodes out for a few months now, and very good feedback from our customers, from our Dell teams that have been familiarizing themselves with the kind of the expansion of the VxRail portfolio, kind of moving into a space beyond what we have traditionally been doing with VxRail standard nodes, I guess, if I'll call them that. The dynamic node is a capability of being able to leverage and use storage as a primary storage that's not the traditional vSAN software-defined storage. So it expands what we're doing from a VxRail hardware node perspective, giving some additional flexibility for our customers while still maintaining some of that familiar VxRail experience, like our lifecycle management.
Yeah, and the good thing about that, Joe, right, is all of our customers get to take advantage of these new node types that you're talking about with dynamic nodes. I've talked to customers that have a significant investment in VxRail, and they want to add additional capabilities that storage arrays can supplement from a storage standpoint. So that's one use case. Another use case is our customers that have invested in VMware Cloud Foundation on VxRail, right? If we can give them the same goodness that they've experienced with their VxRail around lifecycle management, but now they can take that and have it with a traditional storage array for a different type of workload. Potentially now they can bring all of that into a single kind of management under VCF on VxRail so that they can get the benefit of both, the overall ecosystem.
So that's a pretty good segue there, Philip. So you mentioned that some customers can now utilize dynamic nodes with VMware Cloud Foundation on VxRail. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like take for instance, a lot of our customers are using VMware Cloud Foundation, and vSAN, of course, is a part of that. And for years we've been supplementing vSAN storage by adding HBAs into VxRail nodes to have secondary storage, right? Your primary storage was on the VxRail on vSAN. The secondary storage was something you could present to it from a storage array or, maybe an NFS share. That we've been doing that for a long time. The move to dynamic nodes allows us to have a workload domain that doesn't have vSAN. So in that case, now you get to leverage your, PowerMax or Power Store, for instance, to be able to take advantage of those, features that those products have.
And Philip, that helps us plug a gap, if you will, because that's something that Cloud Foundation outside of VxRail has supported for a little while. So that allows those Cloud Foundation on VxRail customers to really have that full feature parity with, Cloud Foundation that's not on VxRail, which is a nice feature to add into this product set itself as well.
Yeah, and I agree totally with that. And just to be clear, right? Dynamic Nodes doesn't require Cloud Foundation. We have lots of customers that are interested in using these without Cloud Foundation. Really, there's two, multiple paths forward here, right? The customers that need all of the Cloud Foundation NSX cloud capabilities, they can leverage this. But traditional VxRail customers that are, leveraging VxRail with, automating their vSphere and vSAN in their core data center or at the edge, they can take advantage of this too.
Right. And,
Awesome.
and to add to that, the other release we had just a week or so ago was that 70350 release. And to Philip's point, that continues to expand dynamic nodes. So we talked about it from a fiber channel HVA perspective, but we can do primary storage to these dynamic nodes from PowerStore, from PowerFlex. We also bring in support for NFS and iSCSI with the 70350 release. So really kind of to Joe's point earlier as well, just expanding out that overall ecosystem. And then also HCI mesh. We focused primarily here on the primary storage of these various storage arrays, but HCI mesh, it gives the customers a great way to expand their VxRail infrastructure and continue to use that vSAN data store where maybe they just need to scale compute and memory independently from storage.
So let's take a step back real quick, right? Because we're talking about a lot of different pieces here, and I don't want to confuse our audience. So you mentioned HCI mesh. I don't know if everybody in our audience knows what HCI mesh is and how it kind of works with VxRail. Can one of you guys explain that real quick? Just real brief.
I'll take a stab at it, and you guys can certainly
Sure.
fill in any gaps that I may miss. But I'll call it kind of in a simple, high level. It's a way of leveraging a vSAN data store outside of the primary vSAN cluster that's managing that data store. So meaning that I can attach additional vSphere hosts to a vSAN data store that's not direct attached storage for the hosts that are part of that cluster. One way of putting it.
If I'm a customer, I can have a dynamic node cluster, 2 nodes, 4 nodes, 5 nodes, whatever the case may be, with no storage in it. If I'm following you correctly, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, no storage in it. And I can now connect storage from another separate cluster that is elsewhere in my environment and gain storage for my dynamic nodes. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And it's all IP connectivity. So it's an all IP-based storage connectivity to that external vSAN data store, that vSAN HCI mesh data store functionality.
Sweet.
Yeah,
so
I was saying, hold on, Chris. The one thing I was going to add in there is that there are some things we have to be aware of, right? Where we can't do HCI mesh across, a WAN essentially. You're going to want to do it within. It has to be from a vCenter construct within the same vCenter data center or hierarchy inside that vCenter architecture. So there are some things to look at from that perspective. But it's a great way for customers to continue to leverage, that unused storage so that, they're not adding nodes with additional storage into their cluster. You have this dynamic node cluster. So we're not adding dynamic nodes to these vSAN clusters. They're independent clusters of dynamic nodes, but it can also help for application licensing capabilities as well, where you can license a much smaller cluster for those applications that do socket or core-based licensing, and you want to try to reduce the cost of that licensed application as well.
So that sounds great, right? Dynamic nodes, there's some caveats to it. Can I use dynamic nodes at my remote offices, or is that not the best solution there? Does VxRail have another solution that could potentially work there?
I'll take a step. You can, but you're not going to be using it with HCI mesh, right? So I have actually talked to a customer that is looking at 2 or 3 dynamic nodes with, say, a PowerStore or something along those lines out at the edge sites, because HCI is great, but HCI is not 100% replacement for traditional architecture. Right? For some customers, it's at 80-90%, some maybe 95%. But what you can do with those dynamic nodes is it helps in those scenarios where HCI isn't a good fit. And usually that's going to be where, if you look at your 3 main resources, we have compute, storage, and memory. If you can't get a nice blend of those 3, that's where dynamic nodes can fit in. But also one of the things I think we touched on as well are these satellite nodes, which are single node VxRail systems, if you will, out at that edge site, which could also be a great use case for some of those smaller edge sites that may not need the resiliency of clustering technology out there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so really, Jeremy, what you're describing is a couple of different types of edge sites, right? And we see this across our customer base. Many of the people watching, I think you guys get this too. Like you have large remote, data centers. You have small remote sites that need high availability. You have far reaching sites that maybe just need to run some virtual machines, but don't necessarily need the high availability. And, as we complete this overall portfolio that we're talking about, we have the, traditional VxRail with 3+ nodes in a cluster. We have our 2-node remote, vSAN solution that a lot of customers take advantage of. Now we have dynamic nodes that Jeremy mentioned. We also have the satellite nodes for that remote site. So it's a robust capabilities depending on the applications and use cases we have at these remote sites. We have different solutions for different, needs. That's pretty much what it is.
So now we have solutions that start at 1 node for satellite nodes, 2 nodes for dynamic nodes, 3+ nodes for traditional VxRail and beyond, right?
Yeah.
So
and including the 2-node, we've historically for a number of years we've supported the 2-node vSAN VxRail configurations as well. If you'd like to have that, still the high availability cluster with a remote witness still be as an option as well. So something that you really do have a pretty wide spectrum of capabilities within the VxRail portfolio. And I'll just remind, the nice thing about all this is all still managed as you've managed a VxRail. So it's all VxRail Manager, VLCM, our entire support ecosystem that we have tied into what we've been doing for VxRail for a good number of years now.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Maybe in future videos, we can do even deeper dives into satellite nodes and the architecture and what we do, what we don't do the same thing for dynamic nodes. So just to recap, just to make sure we're all still going down the same path here, we talked about 70320, which is a release that happened early on in the month for VxRail. Jeremy talked about 70350, which introduced some new additional capabilities around dynamic nodes. The other thing that I want to make sure that we address is, are there any new updates for VCF, VMware Cloud Foundation on VxRail?
So we just announced VCF 4.4.
Okay.
That's the latest release of VCF. So that's something that our customers can upgrade to now, right? Through, walk into their SDDC manager. As long as you're connected to the depot, you should see updates available for VCF 4.4. And so a lot of customers are taking advantage of that because, it gets to pick up these updates that we're talking about for vSphere 7 update 3. It correlates with the VxRail 7.0.320 so that we can take advantage of all of those updates that we've been talking about with the 15G dynamic nodes as well. So yeah, definitely be looking for that. If you're a VCF customer, log into SDDC Manager and you should be notified of 4.4.
And the VCF updates, they go, sorry, Joe. The VCF updates, they go hand in hand.
Maybe you're going to get to that, Curtis. It was just connected, that's aligned with the VxRail 70320.
There you go. That's exactly what I was going to ask, is that, it goes hand in hand with specific VxRail releases. It's not that they can just go to any VxRail release and have VCF 4.4.
That's right. And the good thing is you don't have to go and figure all that out on your own. SDDC Manager is fully integrated with VxRail Manager and manages all that. It's going to prompt you and notify you to go download the VxRail 7.0.320 as you upgrade to VCF 4.4. The beauty of the integration that VMware and Dell Technologies have together with the product VCF on VxRail is highlighted well with SDDC Manager integration.
Okay, so VxRail 7.0 is based on vSphere 7. VCF 4.4 on VxRail 7.0.320 is based on vSphere 7. Are there any updates on vSphere 6.7 and VxRail version that goes along with vSphere 6.7? Joe, any insight in that?
Yeah, so we continue to update the VxRail release train that is part of the vSphere 6.7 release train. So we've had updates for VxRail 4.7 this month, and as well VxRail 4.5, which as well we continue to update, which is vSphere 6.5 aligned, and we'll continue to update those releases as long as VMware continues to offer support for those vSphere releases.
Awesome. Any additional thoughts, guys, from Jeremy, Philip, Joe? Anything else you guys want to add before we close it out?
I think it's good to see that we have kind of continually have software updates. I'll mention real quick is just kind of if you're watching this video, we recorded it here at the end of February. There are a couple things that we talked about, hardware releases that are subject to change, but we've announced and are due to be available to our Dell teams to be able to configure and quote to customers in March. But again, at the time of recording, everything is still on plan, but we'll see. And as you get to this, we'll update this in the month as we go forward.
Yeah, there's two aspects here, right? There's a time of recording and the time that it actually gets posted, right? So we're going to try to get this out as soon as possible, of course. Gentlemen, I do appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today. Everybody have a good day, and we'll catch you guys. We're gonna, by the way, before I turn this off, our plan here is, the four of us would like to make this maybe a monthly cadence. So if you enjoy the video, please post comments, post responses, and we'll take it from there. If you want to see any
topics for the next
topics,
one.
put the topics down below, and we'll turn it into a conversation. Let's make this as interactive as we can, right? So thank you guys. Everybody have a good day.
Thanks. Take care.